back into the chat. I've had a couple of people approach me recently asking about equine welfare and off-the-track thoroughbreds. And joining me today is the General Manager of Equine Welfare for Racing Victoria, Jennifer Hughes. G'day, Jennifer. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no worries at all. First of all, the off-the-track program's got a bit of media coverage of late. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, definitely. So the Off the Track program has been around for over 6 years now, and it was originally born to generate demand for off the track horses in the competitive space. But over the years, it's grown to not only include retrainers, so covering that transition of horses out of racing, but also starting to look at what other careers they can have outside the competitive ones.
And what kind of criteria is used to decide if an off-the-track thoroughbred, i.e. a retired racehorse, can have a second career?
Well, the way that we operate is that our assumption is that most retiring OTTs are capable of a second career. So it's more about finding the right career for them. And the way that our framework works just now is that we have a pool of acknowledged retrainers, and they're our first port of call. When someone comes to us for assistance with rehoming a horse, we circulate that horse to our acknowledged retrainers, and there's over 60 of them, and they all come from different disciplines, and they all have a different way of operating. So they're usually one of those will be interested in one of those horses. But what we were finding a couple of years ago was that some horses weren't being picked up by those acknowledged retrainers because they don't get paid to take these horses. They take them and they either recoup their expenses when they on-sell them, or they keep them for themselves. So it has to be worth their while. And what we noticed was that gap for sort of the next layer down of horses, and that probably comes into the eligibility criteria that we were talking about, whereby when if they don't get collected by our acknowledged retailers, that's one assessment in themselves. We know that they're not the most desirable type of off-the-track horse, and therefore it gets taken into the reset program, which is a funded retraining. And at that point, they get into the second layer of assessment, where we're looking at the physical element. So they undergo a veterinary assessment to check their soundness, and they might be completely sound, no concerns, to take them forward into their second career, or they might need a little bit of rest, a little bit of rehab, or they might not have a ridden career in their future. And then we can basically place them to find the most appropriate career that matches their physical and mental capabilities.
And two of the banner horses are obviously Chautauqua and Hartnell as OTTs now. But are there any other particular horses that are success stories as OTTs, maybe lesser profile ones too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're uncovering different stories every day, especially with our new off the track community, people coming forward with the different horses they've got. But some of our best examples most recently come through our reset program, and those are those horses that perhaps aren't suitable for a highly competitive riding career. And the name that jumps out for me is Chatsfield, who was one of the first horses into the reset program. He came from the RSPCA. He was as a result of one of their investigations, and he went into the reset program and was retrained with one of our retrainers, our acknowledged retrainers, Lisa Coffey at Racing Hearts. And she loved him so much that he is now full-time an equine therapy horse with her Racing Hearts business. And he had no starts. He was registered and he was named, but he never raced. So he had absolutely no profile coming out of racing, but he's found his perfect role as a therapy horse.
And you mentioned the OTT community that's recently been launched. How will that support Racing Victoria's equine welfare programs?
Yeah, and probably in a handful of ways. For starters, it's an incentive-driven traceability for us. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean that we're basically incentivizing people who have an off-the-track horse to tell us what horse they've got through providing an environment, a platform for them to find news, education, opportunities to have subsidized clinics, merchandise, a general sort of riding club for off-the-track owners. And then signing up and then telling us what horse they've got, we get a little bit more of an idea about what off-the-track horses are out there. And already we've had over 1,000 people sign up to that platform, and over 300 off-the-track horses have been claimed. So that's 300 horses that previously we didn't know where they were. So that's the first big thing that the off-the-track community does. It also helps us manage our program, so it increases our efficiencies internally, which is less relevant probably for the wider world, but still important for us. And then the third bit is very important, is that it helps us measure the success of those programs. So the idea is that all horses retiring from racing go into the platform. And then as they pop up through each of our different programs, we understand what horses are using what programs, which ones are successful, which ones maybe need to be tweaked, which ones do we need to invest in more. And if there are certain horses that are not appearing in any of our programs, what are the gaps and what do we need to do to bring them on board as well?
And when you think of off the track thoroughbreds, you generally think of show horses, but are they used for other purposes as well? I see recently in Queensland, Chief De Beers unfortunately passed away. He was a good racehorse in Queensland, and he was used as a mounted police horse. Is there examples of things like that here in Victoria too?
Oh, absolutely. There's not really anything that they can't do in the equestrian or even just pleasure riding world. They're using polo. They make a great eventing horses. They're from their speed and their stamina. We've just launched some more sponsorships in the dressage space. So people are really taking to thoroughbreds in the dressage space. Even just people like myself who just attend local adult riding club rallies on the weekend, don't want to do too much with them. Trail riding horses, therapy horses is becoming more popular as well. We've just, we're coming to the end of our equine business grants, which serves two purposes for us. It allows us to support businesses who are using thoroughbreds as employees, for want of a better phrase. And it also lets us identify where these horses are being used. And it's been so interesting, the applications that we've received as part of that program from trail riding businesses, equine therapy, all the different ways that thoroughbreds are being used out there.
You mentioned equine therapy. I actually interviewed Lisa Coffey recently on my show, and what she's doing is absolutely amazing. I've known Lisa for a very long time now, and some of the results that equine therapy can have, and not just people that have alcohol and drug problems, but children with autism and people that just generally they just want a bit of how do I say, a bit of structure in their life, or just even a little bit of a way to calm them and just relax them. The horses have an amazing ability to do this.
Absolutely. I'm a full convert. I've had horses all my life, and I'm pretty sure I've been using them as a crutch for most of that time. Like you say, the structure they bring to your day, just be that non-judgmental way that they approach you. And I think thoroughbreds are particularly good for that because they're so smart and intuitive.
Could you tell me about some of the other retrainers and what specifically they do with retraining the horses?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got a huge variety of retrainers, and for us, that's what makes our program work, because we talked about having the right horse going to the right place, and there are many different ways or pathways to get there. So we have some retrainers who solely retrain for the rehoming and reselling element of it. We've got some who retrain horses so they can compete on them themselves. And those are professional polo players, high-level eventers, high-level showers as well, or showing people. And then we've got the people that I sort of touched on there who have a business on the side. So they're retraining on one element of their business, but they keep those horses in their own business. So we have a handful of retrainers who also have a riding school on the side, and they use their off the trackers for that. And then I also mentioned the therapy people. And we've now got one particular retrainer who's starting to show a bit of a specialty for training horses for the riding for the disabled, to complement one of our other sponsorship programs.
Are there any other equine welfare programs that are being launched by RV or that will be launched very soon? I know over Spring Carnival last year, there was the hashtag Here for the Horses campaign all over the television and other forms of media. Is there anything like that coming up again too?
So the Here for the Horses campaign will continue. And what that is that's a platform for us to talk about our initiatives. We've just launched the Off the Track community, which also has got the Full Circle program attached to it. And the Full Circle one's particularly exciting because that allows our racing industry to support the horses that are coming out of racing. So as an owner or a trainer or a track rider that's been involved with that horse, they can sign up to be that horse's emergency contact in the future, because as an industry, we can give the horse the best first transition out of racing possible, but they could still end up in trouble second, third transition and maybe 5-10 years down the line. But in giving that extra safety net, that's a tool for our participants to use to be there if that horse needs them in the future. So that's the Full Circle program that's just launched. And then coming soon, we are building to have acknowledged retirement farms to complement the acknowledged retrainers, and that'll be a similar sort of model where we will have retirement farms that sign up to our guidelines and meet a certain standard, and that owners know if they want to use those retirement farms, then they know what they can expect from them.
When you say retirement farms, Jennifer, do you mean similar to like Living Legends, or like in New South Wales? I know Racing New South Wales have Bart's Farm. Is it that kind of model?
Not the same model. So Living Legend, obviously by its name, they tend to be legends that end up there. So and the one in New South Wales is also used to transition horses through there. So that kind of houses their whole program. Whereas what we would be looking at is this is another piece of the puzzle, another piece of our post-racing framework, whereby owners can continue to be responsible for the horse, but they might, rather when the horse is no longer in training, they place it in a retirement farm, and it's owner funded adjustment for the horses to retire. But what we're doing is providing a network of people who can do that for them well.
And what events does the off the track program support? Is there anything coming up soon that everyone should know about?
Yes, so we sponsor a lot of events throughout the year, working with the major equestrian organisations. So people like Victorian Polo, Equestrian Victoria, pony clubs, adult riding clubs. We've actually recently signed an agreement with Marcus Oldham to work with their students as well. So we also sponsor education opportunities. Imminently, we've got the Melbourne International 3-day event at Werribee, which is my favourite event of the year. It's well worth a look-see. That's the Queen's birthday weekend. And there's a number of off the tracks on show there. They really excel in the eventing discipline. And then in July we've got Equitana, which is at the showgrounds in Flemington, which is kind of a very horsey specific show, I suppose. It's almost like the Royal Melbourne Show, but for horses, I would say. As a Brit over here, that's my interpretation of Equitana. It's I think it spreads over 4 days, and there'll be lots of showcasing of thoroughbreds there. And then the last one to put on people's agenda is at the end of July, Equestrian Victoria have their awards evening, where we award our Acknowledged Retrainer of the Year, as well as the off the trackers of the year in each discipline.
All right, Jennifer, thanks very much for joining us today. It's really good to get a bit of an insight into what kind of options are available for horses after they've been retired from racing.
Thank you very much.